classes. But yeah, so I'm Hannah England. I am the academic success coach on the Gainesville campus. Oh, we do not have that big. I was just trying to make sure I could see the chat if anyone had questions. And I work with all students really on things like time management, organization, study skills, test anxiety, and really anything, honestly. If you come to me and you're like, I don't know how to use this piece of technology, I don't know where to go for this. I tell students a lot of times, I feel like I'm the bottom of the barrel, not in a bad way, of just like, if you don't know where else to go, come see me and I will point you in the right direction. We will get you what you need. So I am happy to support all students, adult learners, transfers, freshmen, literally everybody. That's what I'm here for. And I want this to be very interactive. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to add your 2 cents into whatever I say, that is perfectly okay. You can use the chat, you can unmute. And yeah, we'll just make this kind of your session. So just to kind of check in and see where we're at right now. How are you feeling a little past the midpoint of the semester? I feel like the midpoint and the end this semester just got kind of smushed together. Yeah. Because they would like move the withdrawal deadline. And so like some people are taking final, or some people are taking midterms, and some people are like gearing up for finals. So how are you feeling? What has gone well? What has not gone well? What are you worried about right now? Feel free to unmute or put in the chat. Or speak in person.
Oh, guess nobody's worried about anything.
It's perfect, the best semester ever. Oops. Trying to make this bigger so I can see more people.
Let's see everybody.
When you do
Is there, I know sometimes there's a view that's like a, have you ever seen where it's like a classroom view?
Yes. Oh, ladies worried about not having enough time to get work done. That is a real fear for sure.
Gallery, yeah. I am very
No, that's not gonna happen. Nope. Oh yeah, there's the classroom. Yeah. But then you can't see the presentation either. Yeah. We'll just do this. All right. Where'd my chat go?
Oh, Shane is in there now too. Good.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is new for classes, but I am not able to see my grade for this class. Okay, so sometimes it depends on the professor. It depends how they input grades. Some of them are very different. If you want to email me or set up an appointment, I'll share the link to set up an appointment at the end of the session. We can look through it together and figure out, is it a professor thing? Is it a different place kind of thing? We can talk through that for sure. Riley says a good semester so far, fully online, so you're able to manage time. Yes, I love that. And then worried about not being able to manage my time, worried about failing a test, and considering my test taking anxiety. We are going to talk about that today. I have seen test taking anxiety just like skyrocket this semester. And I don't know if just more people are more comfortable like talking about it, or if it's just getting worse. So we're definitely going to talk about test taking anxiety. And then Barbara, mid-semester projects due in November. That's crazy to me because I feel like finals are, since they're the first week of December. Yeah, we are way past the point in my opinion. But like I said, I feel like they got kind of squished together. But yeah. So we're going to talk through, a few of these things today. And again, always welcome to meet with me one-on-one if you have like more specific questions. But all right, so thinking about studying and how you learn information, what do you know about learning? How do you know when you're learning? What do you know about studying? How do you know when you're studying? Kind of using those terms interchangeably. So what do you know about studying? And again, feel free to use the chat or unmute. Either one is totally fine. Grace, do you have any thoughts?
I think learning just everything new for you, that is learning.
Yeah.
So for me, so every day is learning for me, even not in the class. Just because the American culture is
Mhm.
a lot of things I need to learn. Yeah.
Absolutely. I am studying informal versus formal learning right now. And it's interesting to hear like how much we learn or how to think about how much we learn just on a day-to-day basis through interactions with other people or Google, like just Googling something random, like all of that is learning, but we almost don't tie it to like official formal learning as much. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Lots to learn. Let's see. Okay, so we have repetition works best, but then struggling with calculus studying. That is that is fair. And math is a whole different like beast when you come to studying, like memorization, repetition, those are all great things. But when you go into calculus or math classes, it's totally different. It's very practice. Well, yes, there's that memorization, but it's hands-on application practice kind of things. I know I've learned something when I can do an assignment without referencing notes. I love that. I know studying is about memorization. Okay. Awesome. And I do feel like we kind of lump studying and learning together. Whereas studying for a lot of people is about that memorization and just being able to take in that information and regurgitate it on a test, on an assignment. Whereas learning is really much deeper. It's more of truly understanding a concept, being able to do that assignment without referencing any notes, being able to teach it to someone else. So we're going to talk more about how we can learn during our studying today. All right, so metacognition, has anyone ever heard this term before? Thinking about your thinking. This is one of the things that I was taught early in my undergrad about when I was taking education classes, is how important it is to think about how you're processing, think about how you're thinking. So when we practice or use metacognition, we're becoming aware of how we solve problems and we're able to take control of our learning. So this helps us know what works best for us, what doesn't work well for us, when we feel like we are learning, taking the most out of the information that we're learning, and when different techniques don't work. Because sometimes people are more of like hands-on application learners and they need more, maybe more of that like practice or seeing it in real life. Whereas other people, I know I'm a visual learner, so I love to mind map things and see it in an organizational chart. And so when we think about how we think about how we learn best, we're able to be strategic about our study habits and able to make more of the time that we spend studying, to use our time wisely, and how to approach new tasks. So just a little bit about the brain, because I think it's so fascinating. This is from, oh my goodness, the link, I put the reference down at the bottom, she can't even see. That's okay. It's, I guess, brainrules.net. And so they have done a ton of studies on how the brain works, how the brain processes. And so these are 12 rules that they came up with that apply to everyone's brain. So number one, actually I won't read them all to you, but thinking about exercise, we're all wired differently. I know a lot of you said repeating is important, so that fits rules 5 and 6. Sleeping well is important. When you're stressed, you do not learn the same way. Making use of all of your senses. And knowing we're natural explorers. Which ones of these stand out to you as being important when you think of learning and studying? You are recording. stands out most to you when you think about how you learn, how you study?
I think the number 8 is important. Stress brains don't learn the same way, just
Mhm.
by different way to learn new thing. I remember I got a metacognition, this word from my math course. Yeah, I got that, yeah. And just I think the reflection is a very important thing. Every time you learn some new thing and you need to try to build some relationship between the new thing and your experience before, and try to find a best way to get a new knowledge or new things. Yeah, so I think the number 8 is important for me.
If you couldn't hear her, Grace said that number 8 is really important, thinking about how our stress brains don't learn the same way. And she brought up a really cool point about how our brains take in new information and connect it to things that we've already learned. So my super like sciencey education brain thinks of the word schema. So like when we already have knowledge of something, that's our existing schema. And we use new knowledge and we either assimilate that information, so we just kind of like absorb it into what we already know, or we accommodate what we already learned to make room for this new information. And that's one of the learning theories on how our brain processes information, which is really cool.
Thank you, Anna. You just expand. I want to say.
I love it. I love all of the learning theories. And then Barbara says when she doesn't get sleep or good sleep, she can't remember or learn anything. 100%. That is like the number one tip I tell students when they're getting ready for an exam. Do not lose sleep, because you will not remember anything you study. You will not be able to function in the morning. It kind of goes to rule 8 too. You'll be stressed and rushed in your exam. So getting a good amount of sleep is more important than cramming that last information in. And then yes, lady, number 4, losing interest. It's hard to pay attention. Absolutely. I feel like once you get into your major classes, it's a little bit easier because you're a little more interested in the topic. But I've had students who have just struggled through all of their core classes because they're like, I'm not interested in biology. Why am I taking a biology class? I'm not interested in English. I don't want to write this paper. And so kind of balancing I have to do it because this is what's required of me versus I really want to do something I'm interested in. That's really important. Awesome. Anybody else have anything they want to share? I like number 12, that we're powerful and natural explorers, because I think that learning comes naturally to all of us. And sometimes I heard this quote the other day. I was like, I'm always in the mood to learn, but I'm not always in the mood to be taught. And I feel like that's so powerful because we are always naturally curious and wanting to learn information, but we're not always ready to like sit in a classroom and just receive that information. So kind of tapping into that natural exploration that you have within you is important. And I see mine now said, good sleep is important, not being able to function or remember what you learned. Yes, it's also hard to pay attention to the material in a class that's not quite as interesting to you. I definitely agree with that. I will say undergrad can be hard for that reason. Once I got into my graduate program, I was like, oh, this is so much better because it's interesting to me. But some of those classes you're like, I just gotta power through, get them done and move on.
I think the number 7 is also interesting point. The sleeping well and sleep well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, sleep well, think well. How many hours of sleep do y'all get a night?
It varies.
It
Yeah.
varies.
I need to have a set time. I need to start doing that.
Anybody get like a solid, okay, 7 hours, good, that's not terrible, I love it. 7 to 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. Okay, good.
And so sometimes when you just can't understand some point, maybe just give it. And just maybe next morning or the other day, you can just
Try again,
Yes, yes.
when you're not tired.
Okay, most of you get at least 6, so that's good. I love that we're on the upper end of that. But shooting for 8 hours of sleep at night is super important for that brain, for your learning. I know that that's not always possible for everybody. Right now, I have a little one on the way and I do not get 8 hours of sleep at all. But shooting for that is really important because sleep well, think well. Yeah,
Oh.
Shane, no.
Needs work.
I love that you recognize it needs work. I appreciate that. I know it's hard, especially when y'all are adult learners, you have families, you have jobs, you have other commitments that are pulling you away from sleep. You're like, oh, sleep's not the most important thing, but honestly, it makes such a difference in just about every other aspect of your life. So, Shane, working on that. All right, so I know one of you mentioned test anxiety earlier, and this is something that like I said, I've seen a lot of this semester, more so than I have in past semesters. So test anxiety might look like you have a headache, you're feeling nauseous, your breathing is heavy, you're sweating. I know when I have that test anxiety, my heart is racing and I am feeling like sweaty. So those physical symptoms, feeling lightheaded or almost faint. You might have some emotional symptoms of like feeling stressed or fearful, helplessness. A lot of people have this just huge fear of what if I don't do well and then I get a bad grade and then I fail the class, and they like start to spiral into this, and you get those racing thoughts, those negative thoughts. Another thing I've heard this semester, which has been huge, is the mind going blank. Does anybody feel like they walk into an exam and their mind just like, don't know where it went? I've heard that over and over this semester, more so than I ever have before, but that's a symptom of test anxiety. You might have difficulty concentrating, again, thinking negative thoughts. Comparing yourself to others is huge. I hear so many students, they're like, oh my gosh, this person finished before me. I'm always the last one there. I felt like the professor had eyes on me the whole time. And like all of those thoughts of comparing yourself to others and just feeling that pressure just builds and makes it so much harder to concentrate on your test. Responders, oh my goodness, yes, Riley. I totally understand why they need those like lockdown browsers, but at the same time, it gives so much test anxiety. I did a certification test the other day, and it was a lockdown browser. They had someone watching you. You had to submit like pictures of your work environment, and I had a tissue box because I have allergies, and so I had a tissue box on my table, but that was like the only thing there. And the guy was like, do you need tissues? I was like, I kind of, like, I feel like my nose is gonna start running. And he was like, okay, well, can you just take out like 1 or 2 and like put the box somewhere else? And I was like, okay, that's fine. And like, this was making my anxiety so much worse because I was already like stressed coming to this test. And now this guy is like questioning my tissue box. Tissue box. So I took out 2 tissues, like threw the box on the floor. And he was like, okay, I need to see the tissues.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, you saw me just pull them out of the box. So I kind of like held them up to the camera, and he was, now you see them front and back.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm gonna make it through this exam because it just makes your test anxiety so much worse. So all of these things, they play into your ability to be successful on exams. So kind of thinking through some strategies of how we can overcome that. Okay, other causes. Being afraid of failing, lack of preparation, this is number one. When I talk to students about test anxiety, go in confident in yourself, because most of the time you are afraid that you didn't study enough, you didn't prepare enough, but go in confident. And to have that confidence, you do also have to prepare. So not having that blind confidence of like, I didn't do anything, it's gonna be great. Which I'm sure is not any of you. I feel like adult learners really care a lot more about studying and putting forth that effort. But having confidence in yourself that you did the work, you've been in class, you've learned, you've studied, and you are gonna do well, having that confidence. And then also a big one with adult learners is that perfectionism, just wanting, I hear laugh. Just wanting everything to be perfect. Grace, you feel that?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think, I could be better if I just put more things and just a little harder. And right now I can got much more better, yeah.
Yes.
I hate that word, but sometimes I just have that.
No, it's fair. We put so much pressure on ourselves to do the best of the best. And it's taken me a long time to learn like that balance between doing really well and being perfect. And I heard somebody say the other day, perfectionism is the enemy of really good, because we focus so much on being perfect that a lot of times what is really good and what's good enough falls to the wayside. So yeah, finding that balance of
Yeah, sometimes I just talk to myself, just do my best. That's enough, yeah.
I hear students say all the time, C's get degrees. And that like killed me at first. I was like, oh, no, you should shoot for higher than a C, like have more pride. But sometimes their best is a C, like someone's best might be a C, and that's totally okay. Or it might be their best in this class, like maybe you're not as strong in biology, so a C is the best you can do, and that's okay. So finding that like give of, okay, this is not what I want to do, it's okay if it's not perfect.
No one is perfect.
It's hard, yeah, no one is perfect. As much as we want to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so combating that test anxiety, how do we get through when those feelings start to arise? So number one is preparation, which I know you all know this. Being present in class, being engaged, so taking notes, working with the other students in the class, having conversations. I always I never want to be like the first one to answer a question. Like that's not who I am. I'm more of a quiet person, but I strive to always know the answer so that if I was called on, I am like ready and prepared. So that's a strategy to kind of help you feel more engaged in it, or like answer it yourself in your head so you feel confident in that, in your abilities. And then developing good study habits, working intentionally and really activating your learning. So I have a kind of routine that I follow for all of my classes, which I might get to later in the slides, I can't remember. But preparing before going into class, so looking over what we're gonna cover that day, looking over, just like skimming the textbook or the notes online, or just even having an idea of what that topic is. And then while I'm in class, taking notes, actively participating, things like that. And then after class, making a quick little 5-10 minute summary of what I learned during that lecture, during that class period, to kind of cap the learning. Because a lot of times we go from this class to this class to this class, or we go from class to family to other commitments, and we don't take time to kind of put a cap on that learning. So taking 5-10 minutes after class just to do a brief summary, highlight key points, write down questions, just anything to kind of like summarize and be intentional about what you learned that day.
It's just like what Grace said about reflection. You're
Yes.
reflecting on what you're reflecting on it. You're thinking back, what did I learn today?
Yes.
So just reflecting on your day, so, or on your class.
Yes, reflecting that metacognition coming back in. And then you're building these like little study summaries that you have over the course. So when you go to prepare for the test, you can connect your little summary or your little key points to what you learned that day, and not have to feel like you have to study everything, because your brain can make those connections. Skills, another thing, I know time is hard for people in college, especially on those timed exams. So taking practice tests, timing yourself with those practice tests. I know some people have mixed feelings about AI and the tools that you have. But AI can be a wonderful tool. And I have put in like topics or notes into ChatGPT and said, can you develop questions based on these notes? And it will spit out, you can do like multiple choice, you can do short answer, like you can kind of give it your guidelines. And it has made such a difference in doing those practice problems.
It's great.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And then you can even have it dig deeper. So if it's giving you just like multiple choice, easy recall questions, you can say, can you develop more like deeper questions or do more application questions? And it'll go. And obviously not everything's perfect that it's going to give you, but it's a great place to start, and it might kind of provoke other conversations or other explorations you want to have. So yeah, use all the tools at your disposal, especially if you want to do those practice tests and be timed on them. Using test taking skills. So I know this is a big thing with test anxiety, is having those tools in your toolbox to feel confident going into a test. So the number one that works for me is if it's multiple choice, I read the question with the answer choices covered up, whether that's on a screen or on a piece of paper, I have it covered up. I answer it first in my head, and then I go look at the answer choices and see which one matches. I do this because of two things. One, you're not going through the answer choices and it's like, oh, that one's kind of right. Oh, that one's kind of right. That one might be what they want. Because they're made almost to not trick you, but to kind of trick you into thinking about the question differently. So if you already come in with an answer, you'll be more confident in your response and finding that in the answer choices. Now, on the flip side to that, you might read a question and have no idea, like either have no idea what the answer is, or feel confident in the answer, think you know, and then it not be anywhere close to the answer choices at all. I've had that happen multiple times. And it takes away some of that anxiety for me, because I'm like, oh, I don't know this one. My guess was not even close to correct. So I can take just a guess out of the answer choices and move on from there. So that's been the biggest thing that's helped me kind of with test anxiety is answering that question before reading the answer choices. Another skill a lot of people do is they'll brain dump when they get into an exam, especially if it's paper pencil or you have some kind of something you can write on. So a lot of times we hold on to that information and that like we're trying to hold on in our short-term memory, something that we're afraid we're gonna forget for the exam. So if you come in and you brain dump whatever that is on the test, then you can let that go and free up your mind to think about other things that you've studied. And then just kind of like the normal, like answering the questions you know first, and then returning to the ones that you're not quite as familiar with. And then the last one is attitude. In my opinion, this is the most important. There is absolutely zero benefit to negative thinking. Like it does not help you, it does not help anybody. So going in with those positive thoughts, listening to your favorite music before you walk into a test, doing like meditation practices. One thing when I am stressed, I do something called noting. where I count my breaths, like breathe in, count 1, breathe out, count 2, and just really kind of focus on that. And then if I notice my mind starting to wonder like, oh, I have this test that I'm really worried about, instead of trying to push that thought away, just like noting like, hey, that's something that's there. It's something I'm feeling, something I'm thinking. I'm not gonna try to get rid of it, but I'm just gonna know it's there, and I'm gonna come back to my breath. So whatever your practice is to help you stay positive, stay calm is really important. I also tell students, don't try to like cram right before an exam, like, oh, I need to look over my notes one more time, or I need to look over that section, because that automatically puts you in this frantic mode. Whereas if you go in calm, you go in like, I got this, even if you're not as confident in a certain section, you'll feel so much better than if you just are like last minute throwing everything in your bag, trying to get ready for the exam. So yeah, positive thoughts. I'm talking way too long. But I want to, anybody have questions, thoughts, like things that you deal with test anxiety, or things you use to kind of help you get through it? But if you have anything, put in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna skip that slide because I know we only have a few more minutes. But thinking through how to study and how to prepare. So passive versus active learning. Passive is something that you're just kind of doing passively, like you're not engaged in it, you're not producing anything, you're not creating anything, you're just listening, you're just reading, you're just absorbing whatever that is. Whereas active is something that you're doing, something you're physically doing. So you're creating, you're analyzing, you're planning, you're doing something more physical. So I love this chart. I don't know if the numbers are scientifically accurate, but I do feel like it represents how we can actively learn. So you can remember 10% of what you read, 20% of what you hear, 30% of what you see, and 50% of what you see and hear. When I think of that, I think of classroom lectures. You are listening, you are looking, you are reading. And a lot of times we take that into our study practices. We reread, we might listen to note or to lectures or anything, and we might review or like just look over our notes. Whereas you remember 70% of what you say and write, and 90% of what you do. So the biggest thing to help studying is to make sure you're active in that process. So just some top active learning tips, talking about your learning, whether that's with a partner, whether that's with a group, whether that's to your dog. Like I have literally sat and talked to my dog about different concepts, and I know she's looking at me like, please just throw the ball. But I'm like, no, we're talking about this right now. And so talking it out helps you remember it even stronger than just like reading it or thinking about it. They also say if you can teach it to someone, you are much better or much more prepared to do the exam or to recall that information, because you have to have enough knowledge to try to teach it to someone else. So I have a lot of students who will call their mom or their best friend or whoever on the way home and teach them whatever they're learning. And that might be finding another adult learner. Maybe you're not in the same program, but I can teach you about education, you can teach me about business, and we can kind of go back and forth. They don't have to know a lot on the topic. It's just that practice of teaching. literally anyone who will listen, or even not listen, it's fine. And then to take that even a step further, you could have them ask questions about it, ask for clarification, engage in a conversation with you, just to kind of help you develop that skill a little more. Creating, this is my favorite. I love to create, I love visual effects and all the things. So, oh yes, okay. Barbara said, very true. If an online class has just slides versus if the professor has slides plus a video, if I can hear the chapter and read the chapter, that works the best. Yes, because you're activating multiple modes of that engagement. You have the listening, the seeing, the reading, you're using more of your senses, which is really cool. Sorry, I got distracted. Creating mind maps. So anytime I have a topic that I'm like really struggling to work through, or even just like a regular topic that I want to know more about, I will like review, like look over my information, look over the textbook, look over the notes, and then I'll create a mind map. So just like some kind of chart that displays the topic and definitions and information and how they connect. And I do it from memory as much as possible first. And then I'll pull in my notes and fill in those missing pieces. So I'm actively creating something. I put flashcards on here. I feel like that's hit or miss. Some people do really great with flashcards. Other people, it doesn't work as much for them. For me, I'm one of the people that flashcards don't really work well for me. I want to do more of like drawing it, charting it, making those connections, things like that. Writing quick summaries, like I kind of mentioned at the end of class, if you can just write a quick summary of what you learned that day, you're already starting that active learning and studying process. Connecting to real world examples. Psychology is my favorite to connect to real world examples, because you can pick a diagnosis and be like, oh, that sounds like this person. And it could be a real life person, it could be someone on TV. It doesn't matter. You can connect it to them, and it gives you that real world example to pull from. And then obviously math is huge for solving practice problems. Even like Spanish and things, doing those practice problems, using time practice, things like that. And then this kind of goes with creating, but developing. I am a big proponent of developing your own study sheet. Because when a professor gives you a study guide, you're going to go over that information. You're going to have to look in your notes and the lectures and all the things and pull everything together. So if they don't, make your own. Develop your own study sheet. Make it something that you can actually use as a tool to prepare. And I promise you'll get more out of creating it than you will reviewing it. So great tool to have. I love it. Okay, we are like almost out of time. I think this is almost the end. Okay, so testing techniques. I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but doing that brain dump at the beginning. If you're holding something in your mind that you're afraid you're gonna forget, put it down on the test first, and then you don't have to worry about it because it's already in writing. Doing a quick preview of the test. Sometimes it helps to know it's gonna be pros and cons for certain people. If you look at the whole test and it's gonna give you anxiety, don't review the test. But if you like to know what you're getting into before you start it, do just like a quick preview through it. See how many short answer, how many multiple choice, just kind of gauge what the test is gonna look like. Answer the easy questions first, things that you know and feel confident on. Those are quick, easy answers. It says skip difficult questions. I want to say I prefer take a guess on those difficult questions and start them for review, because I have a lot of students who run out of time towards the end of their exam and they haven't had a chance to go back and look at those skipped questions. So if you can just put anything down, even if you're not confident in it, put something down and then note to come back to that. Guessing at the questions you don't know. I know this is like super elementary, everybody knows, don't leave anything blank. Just guessing, putting something down. Even if it's a written response and you don't feel like you've got enough time to write your response out, writing something related to the topic, something in the realm of what they're looking for, even if you're like rushing to write at the end, put something down. Reviewing the entire test, I put a star by this because for my overthinkers, this is terrible. Do not review the entire test because you're gonna go back and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, maybe it's this answer when you felt so confident the first time in the answer you chose, and then you change it, and then half the time it's wrong. So I recommend reviewing those hard questions, unless you're not an overthinker and you just wanna go back and look through all of them. That works, that's great. That's not me, but you do you. And then using all of your time. I know so many people hate to be the last person in the exam. It does not matter. You use all that time. Nobody is judging you. Nobody cares. Honestly, everybody's so worried about their own test. So use the time you have. Look over, go back and look at those hard questions. Add to your written responses. Use that time. Okay, whew, I sped through the end of that because I was trying really hard to get through it all. I always like plan for less and we're always run out of time. But I just wanted to put this up here. This is the link to book an appointment. I just want to make sure it works. Yes, okay. That's the link to book an appointment with either me or another academic coach where we can talk through some of these things more specifically. If you have questions about test anxiety, time management, having those, just like any conversations that you're struggling with, or just want to talk through, I'm here and happy to support you.